When you check into a hotel and you present your ID, do you ever think that you're giving away far more personal information than necessary? The hotel only wants to prove your identity, but now they also know your age, weight, home address, driver's license number, and more. As soon as you hand it over, you lose control. We're often asked to give away too much of our private data. Once it's out of your hands, that information can become susceptible to hacking, the sale of your personal data, or a barrage of unwanted ads. But what if there was an option to verify your personal information without giving away unnecessary, critical, private details? Verifiable credentials, a pillar of Web 5, solves this. There are digital certificates of claims that are easily shared in a private and secure way. They can prove your legal name, age, ownership of an asset, or anything really. Verifiable credentials limit the amount of data you share to only what's required, and they can't be tampered with or faked. Let's reimagine how identification could work. With Web 5, the government issues a verifiable credential that proves your identity and lives in what we call an identity wallet. So now when you check into the hotel, you present the front desk with a verifiable credential and share only what the hotel needs. This establishes that you are who you say you are, without giving away more personal information than you'd like. Verifiable credentials make proving claims easier, more private, and more secure.
Hello, y'all. Happy Friday. Hey, Tanya.
Hey.
How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. All right. For folks who are tuned in right now, you're watching TBD TV. It's a weekly live stream where we basically chat with SSI experts about what they're building in the ecosystem. This week, we're switching it up a little bit. I want to say hi to some people as well before we go forward. So, hey, Ace, and hi to Mike. I haven't talked to Mike in a while, so hope you're doing well. And Ace said happy Friday to both me and you. All right, so what we're doing this week, usually I bring on like an SSI expert and usually I'm the host, but we're going to switch it up where Tanya is going to be the host and she's going to ask me a couple of questions about like Hacktoberfest and open source so that y'all get an idea of how you can get involved in some of TBD's projects. And then next week, we'll expand on that even more. But I always love to do a little icebreaker question before we actually like dive into everything. And my icebreaker question is, what's the most embarrassing fashion trend you've ever embraced? And I've been wanting to ask people this question, but I've been like, I don't know if they're gonna go like for a safe for work answer, but I'm like, I trust you, Tanya.
What a question to start with. And thank you for that much trust. I would say the most embarrassing fashion trend I've ever embraced where I just didn't like it was low-rise jeans. It just felt like, oh, my light went away, but it just felt like that just wasn't safe. So that, even though that I think that's coming back in a trend now, I don't know, but that's mine.
Yeah, I don't know how people. I'm like a true millennial because low rise jeans, they don't work for me. I'm way better with like high waist or mid waist.
Yeah.
But like low rise, that's giving like plumbers.
Yeah, low rise is giving like plumbers and just like, I don't know, danger that I don't want in my life. So
For me, I think like the fashion trend for me is like, I don't know if you ever seen people like laughing at like, oh, in like 2010 we were like dressing like business casual, like we were going into the office but we were just going to the club. Like that was me all the time. Like I had like a peplum, a blazer, and I'm like going out with my friends.
When you realize you're at the club and you're basically in work wear and you're like, oh, okay.
I could go back and forth. Yeah. So, but I was like 14. So yeah, that was one trend that I was like, why was I dressing like that? But at least it was put together.
Yeah.
All right, and feel well. Usually, I have people introduce themselves, and I know you run your own live stream for TBD. But do you want to introduce yourself for TBD TV folks?
Yeah. So, hey everyone, I'm Tania Chakraborty. I am the technical community manager here at TBD. You will probably see me most frequently in our show and tell live streams and just in general in our Discord. So, yeah, you'll be seeing me a lot in general if you haven't already.
Cool, cool. And you do a wonderful job at all the community management. And for me, I never really introduced myself. Well, maybe I think I introduced myself when I first started live streaming with Ace, and then I was like, nobody need to know who I am. But yeah, for folks who don't know, my name is Rizel. I'm a developer advocate here. Love open source, and I'm excited to dive into that. Before we start asking me any, well, yeah, I was gonna say something, but now we can switch over from you being or me being the host to you being the host.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable. I'm like,
It's a little bit of a change, but it's
yeah.
okay. Change can be a good thing. So, yeah, so right now we're going to ask some questions more about like the general open source journey because if anybody doesn't know, Hacktoberfest is literally starting next week and going on for the next month, and we'll talk a bit more about that a bit later. But first, I'll start with just some general open source journey questions because I myself also, have thought of these questions before. I've worked in open source before, but not I feel like I'm still new to it every single day, but it has like affected my life in all sorts of ways, and I'm sure for many other people. So the first question I have is, what's a pivotal moment in your open source journey that like very significantly impacted your career path?
Yeah, easy question for me. Basically, when I was joining GitHub as a developer advocate, I had admitted to them that I never like contributed to open source before. It was part of like my interview process because they said basically like present something that can be improved about GitHub, and I'm like maybe some of the content or the guides and paths around contributing to open source for first timers. And so my boss, they hired me, but my boss DM'd me and he was like, yeah, if you're gonna start at GitHub, you need to contribute to open source. Like, so I was like, okay. So before I started, I did like one contribution and like to his repository that he had, like he has his own open source project. And I was like, wow, this is way easier than I thought it was gonna be. I don't know why I had been nervous to contribute before. And the part where I thought it was like a pivotal moment for me is that like I ended up like writing a blog post about it, and then like it went the blog post went viral. The organizer of All Things Open asked me to speak at his conference. I'm like, I never did public speaking before. I'm nervous.
Wow.
So like, yeah, that was a pivotal moment when I realized, oh my God, like open source really does open up a lot of doors for you, and also just sharing what you've learned in public as well, because then people are able to see like how my mind works.
That's awesome. I'll also be sure to answer this question myself because I still feel very new to
Yes.
it. But when it came to my open source journey, I just realized I've always enjoyed helping people in general and professionally as well. I wanted to bring that into play. Like I decided many years ago, I started off in marketing um, because I just like telling stories. And I just feel
Mhm.
like when it comes to open source, some of the contributions that you can make is you can help people tell the stories about whatever product or tool set or app that they may be building. And that's what I am still like looking to do more of with more blog posts and content and also just tools that can help other community managers in the space because like that's always a cool thing that we could have. But the pivotal moment for me was when I was working at a startup about 4 or 5 years ago by now, maybe more. Time is a bit fake. And it was a startup for a web app that was used by many artists. And I had to get in touch with a lot of open source developers in general. And to me, I just didn't realize like how much of the internet was crafted by open source developers and engineers in general. And a lot of them helped within our community build the rest of our app out too. So that was like the pivotal change for me. But yeah.
That's actually really cool that you had to like help connect artists. And yeah, I think that's another thing. Like a lot of people don't realize how much of the internet or web depends or supports or is supported by open source. We kind of just take it for granted. And
Yeah.
there's all these open source maintainers that are like burnt out trying to like keep it together for us. Like they're legitimately like when I talk to them at GitHub, like because I would get to connect with them a lot, they're like, yeah, I just do this as an extra job. Like sometimes I'm on vacation, like people are asking me for help. I'm like, oh, poor thing. So that's another thing to say, like support your open source maintainers financially. If you can't do it financially, try to help them like in other ways as well, because they're doing a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the second question that's a really great follow up to that when it comes to contributing to open source, right? Because sometimes whether you're new or just in general as a person, it can be kind of intimidating the thought of contributing something that everybody can see.
Yeah.
And I feel like with open source specifically, like you can kind of see an immediate impact for your contribution and immediate comments and stuff like that. So, how has contributing to open source shaped your professional skill set in like unexpected or surprising ways, would you say?
Yeah, I mean to build up, and I like that you answer too. Like if you have an answer to this, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I think to build upon like that story that I initially told about like my first time contributing to open source, it also helped with like other things, like just exposing me to other technologies that I might not have gotten exposed to. Because I know like as an engineer, from an engineering perspective, like you working on a particular tool, especially if you're not like in a consulting agency or anything where you're switching all the time, you're working on that particular tool with those same technologies every single day. So you're not getting exposed to what else is out there, other best practices, like other methodologies. And I think contributing to open source allowed me to say, oh, like I didn't know that this framework existed, or I didn't know that this is how people might go about solving a certain or particular situation. And then back to like how I talked about like me getting a chance to do public speaking and stuff like that. That was another professional skill set for me, because I was not good at public speaking at all, and I'm getting better. So that like opened the doors for me to be able to get a chance to do that. And then probably last is like I think I got other skills besides just like coding, like maybe a little bit more project management and communication with other people. Because before it was like I'm just coding, I'm just doing what I have to do as a junior engineer, and I think it leveled me up a bit more.
That's awesome. Yeah, like it's very interesting. So my answer to this, how it shaped my professional skill set, where it really surprised me, was again, I keep going back to the storytelling, but to be a bit more specific, um, your contributions that you make are already public facing. And when you're coming from marketing or writing or anything that's actually not super technical necessarily, where you're telling a more of a broad story with contributions to open source specifically, um, it's jumping to the fact that like, okay, whatever I'm publishing here, like it is like the final version, let's say. um and I was not used to that. I'm not used to thinking that way, or it's something that I developed over time, and it made me realize um there are certain things that I feel like I learned just by doing, I should say. Yeah, that's like the better way to say it. Open source has really taught me how to act and learn by doing, as opposed to too much ideating and planning, because I'm a really good planner, I feel like, but at the same time I sometimes get stuck in the nitty-gritty. But with open source contributions, you're better off contributing what you have, obviously, to high quality and standards earlier than like waiting too long, and then maybe your contribution is like not as relevant now or could have been useful then. Yeah, that's like the main thing I think of.
That's a really good point. I think open source really does embrace that. I think I'm more on the side of being an executor than a planner.
Yeah.
And I think it like I was like this might be why another reason why I really like open source. But I think that also goes like that lesson or whatever that point that you said, that also goes to people who like they build a project not necessarily as a contributor, but like maybe they're like the creator or maintainer of a project, and a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm not ready to put it out to the world yet. But I'm like, listen, just open source it. It doesn't matter if it's that good or not. Like people will come in and help you refine it. Or also it just helps people to see that process of your project getting better and better and you talking about it, because they get more invested in the journey.
Yeah, and to add to it too, it kind of forces you to um what will how should I say this? It forces you to just, put your product out there, let's say, and validate whether or not like what you're working on is actually useful to people. Like a lot of what I have worked on and grown up around in general is products that like take a lot of time before anybody ever sees like even like the beta version of something, for example. But with open source, like you can immediately start working on it, and people get to appreciate that journey too, of how something, you know ultimately comes from nothing. And that's really cool. And I was just talking to a coworker, the other day. I won't disclose who or anything, but they're talking about how just in their off time, like they really enjoy contributing to open source things. Like many years ago, that's how they got started. They just were like, oh, let me just pick up like JavaScript and learn about different languages. And oh, there's this thing on the internet now, so let me see if I can play around with this. Like you can get started in very unexpected ways. But yeah.
I
So, oh, did you have anything else to add?
No, I was just saying I agree.
But so the next question I have for open source in general, like open source is like a very core principle for TBD, right? So how does this approach like challenge traditional notions of like software development, specifically in the finance sector?
Yeah, I think fintech is like traditionally a little bit more closed source. I think because of like the nature. Well, I'm new to fintech, but I think a lot of it is based on like the nature of like how private a lot of the stuff is that's going on within fintech. Like we're dealing with people's money, so oftentimes I think people are like leaning towards like let's go more on the closed source side. But with TBD, we want to create we're creating tools, open protocols, right? We're creating tools that connect everyone and aren't creating barriers for everyone. So that's sometimes what we mean when we say decentralized, right? We want to be able to enable people to move money in different parts of different countries. And I think part of that is like we want to make it open, right? And then we also want to enable other people to get involved in that as well. So we don't want to just build it in a vacuum and we don't know if that's actually applicable to people. I think a benefit of like open source is you gain a little bit of innovation. We've seen people like Tanya, you've seen people in our Discord, they come in and they're like, oh, why didn't you add this? Like, and then we're like, oh, we would love to add that. Or sometimes they're like, oh, we have a PR up, we want to add this. Some people have even said like, hey, we'll translate this in a particular language or whatever, like whether it's a spoken language or a programming language. So it really opens us up to be able to better like facilitate and help other people in the world, because that's our main goal.
That's a really great in-depth answer. To add to that, I'm also pretty new to fintech in general, and one of the challenges I've seen to add to your answer is when it comes to, let's just say, like a traditional product release cycle, right? That's like not open source at all. And I've worked on a financial product before too, where you basically develop and have like a feedback cycle that's internal, and then you publish it, and then you act on feedback from the community or your users, right? And with open source, it's like people are already like using the tools or the protocols that we push out for everyone to try and develop with, because it's open source. And because of that, we start to see like repeated questions or um, like requests for like, hey, like, can we have, for example, with TBDEX, like wanting a list of PFIs or participating financial institutions, right? And it's like, it sometimes feels like there is a constant backlog, but I think that's always a wonderful problem, problem in quotations to have, because that just means the demand is there and we're just working together on it.
I totally agree with that. And I feel like in software engineering, there's always a constant battle.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So we're going to pause really quickly for a quick commercial break. This is going to tell y'all a little bit about how you can get involved in Hacktoberfest and what's available. All right, we're back. I'm going to quickly say hi to Emmanuel. And now that we saw like a little preview of like what Hacktoberfest has to offer, and we talked about our own all open source journeys, now we're going to talk a little bit about Hacktoberfest, and I'll pass it back to you, Tanya. I know you're supposed to be the host, and I'm like, take it over.
That's okay. Oh my goodness, I can't. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about Hacktoberfest, as Rizel just mentioned. And, this year, TBD and Block are participating in Hacktoberfest. And you saw a little bit about, the different projects are participating, prizes you can win by contributing to our projects this year. But what exactly is Hacktoberfest, if you had to answer or like say to somebody who doesn't even know what it is?
Yeah, and I think it's common for people to not know what it is. So Hacktoberfest, in like a short way, I would describe it, it's like a month-long celebration of open source, right? And the real goal is that we want to encourage people to contribute to different projects, whether you're someone who's never contributed to open source before, or you weren't aware that this open source projects exist and you want to contribute and come in and make it better. So it's really just like an awareness tool for open source projects to be able to bring in other not even just developers, but technologists to help make the product better.
That's awesome. Yeah. This will actually be my first Hacktoberfest where I am like publicly involved with the community and really and in fintech in general. So it's been very exciting. I can't wait to see all the contributions and stuff. So yeah. The next question that I also feel like I have asked myself, and I realize this, you'll be able to answer this more, but do you actually have to be an expert specifically in decentralized technologies like or fintech to get involved with TBD's projects this year?
This year, no. I feel like both you and me, Tanya, like we put in a lot of effort to kind of lowering the barrier for folks so that anyone can really contribute. We've usually like it's a little bit hard because right we have all these SDKs, and when it's like an SDK or a programming framework or something like that, you kind of have to understand the internals because this is what's enabling people to build on top of or build projects on top of your tools. But we both we our team, Angie as well, right, we recognize that we need more examples that are out there, like example applications and stuff like that. So we're like, why don't we have people contribute in those types of ways? So we have a couple of web apps that are built in different programming frameworks. We have CLI tools that are built in like Rust. We have like AI tools that are built in like Python that enable people to just dive right in without necessarily having experience with decentralized technologies or with fintech. And then I think that getting involved that way will enable them to like, you know, get experience or exposure to those other technologies.
Yeah, I to also add to also answer this question a little bit, from my perspective as somebody that's not an expert in either uh, decentralized technologies or fintech at all. When it comes to getting involved, like you can see our blog post right here, and it actually talks a bit about, there are some things that can help you get started. But just to add, with our projects this year, we focus a bit on like people like me that maybe need something that's a bit either easier or maybe not coding specific to get them started. And as you mentioned yourself, like that can be your intro to decentralized technologies, because like our documentation is very extensive, and I myself have been learning from those as well, and a lot of people have been too, and they've been able to get started. So yeah. So now to lead into the next question, as a very nice transition, can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek, with the contribution opportunities that are available that, you and I have worked on? And as a note, before we show anything, we are going to go very in depth for our show and tell next week. It will be October 2nd. So on Wednesday, I believe that is. So yeah.
Yeah, I can totally do that. And I agree with you. I'm not going to go super in depth. I think and let me remove this banner for when I share my screen. But for next week, we'll kind of talk about what issues are out there and stuff like that. For now, I'm just going to kind of show UIs or user interfaces of certain projects that we have, just so people get an idea of what's out there. And I do see a question in the chat, so I'll start it for after I quickly show these. I am never the person that demos, so hopefully.
Hopefully it goes well. It's okay.
All right, first thing that we have is our DWA starter app, and basically this is like it's a progressive web app, but with decentralized web technologies built in, so like with Web5 and stuff like that, like completely immediately built in. This one we already have this version. It's built in React and V, right? So we have this option for you to be able to connect to a wallet, which I don't have a wallet right now on hand with me. We have this option for you to just create a new DID. And what really happens here is it's leveraging something. And you can check our documentation because I might be using some like high level concepts that people might not be familiar with, but it's leveraging DRLs, which are decentralized resource locators, to pull in and fetch the data. Kind of like it's like a decentralized version of URLs. So I can like do things right now. This is just a very simple example app where it shows like, oh, okay, you're adding a task like hello. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Where you have that task added. You could edit it, of course. I can do like exclamation marks, whatever, and delete it. So what's happening behind the scenes is we're using DRLs. You can see that it says like, hi, my DID name. I think it should have updated. Uh-oh. Something happened. It should have updated. I didn't build it, but I'll open an issue. That's another thing. Maybe just fix that part. But what we really want here is to be able to build this in different programming frameworks and languages. So this is already built in React and Vite, but there's lots of opportunities for us to rebuild this in Vue and even vanilla JavaScript, and any other frameworks that you all like suggest or want to get into. But as you can see, there's different like parts of this. Like we can say like, hey, or we have issues, and you'll see them to like implement dark mode and light mode, to be able to implement that to-do list and all of that. Another project that we have that has a UI, it's not the cutest, right? It's like basic, but a lot of people have asked us for a protocol schema builder, because it can be annoying to make sure you've written the JSON in the right levels and nested structures and all that. So what we have here is like, you can just fill in this form and say like, I don't know, I'm going to say google.com or I'll say example.com because that's what's coming to mind for me. And then you can see here, it added the example for you. You can say a type is like a chat that you have, and we can say schema chat. So people that are familiar with protocols, you may understand what I'm doing. And you might just be like, what I really want is a way to not have to fill this all out like manually, but instead I can just fill it out in a form. I can copy that JSON. I can add actions onto them. Let's see, I'll add a chat structure, and then I can say, oh, anyone can create an update or anyone can delete, and I can copy that JSON. Of course, we would love to make this more improved, right? We can make the UI look cuter. We want to add more features. Protocols do more things like tags.
Just to quickly interrupt, we're not seeing the protocol builder
Oh, you
screen.
can't see it?
No, I realized like we're meant to see that. There
Sorry.
you go.
Oh, see, I was sharing not for me. Hold on. Let me just do this over.
Do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for telling me. All right. Because I'm using one screen. What I was saying is, here's the protocol schema builder, right? And we have oftentimes like this JSON that people need to create. They don't like to, but it can get really nested and really overwhelming and confusing when you're like, oh, I have this nested structure, another nested structure. Is it at the right level? Why do I have an error? I'm not sure. So this can just build it out for you. And I'll just do this over for you all. So like I put in example.com, that's right there. I can say if I want it to be published or not. I can say, okay, some of the types I want is like a chat type. I can say this schema. Thank you for telling me. That's funny. I can continue to add more types, but you see that this was added. I can say I want the structure to be a chat, and this is where we like define who has different permissions to do what. So we can say anyone can create an update, or you can change it to author, recipient, whatever, right? So that's like the basic functionality that's there right now, but we want to add more. We want the UI to look cuter. We want to add, there's so many things you can do with protocols like tags, nested structures, figuring out like record subscriptions and stuff like that. So if people can dive in and help us with that, and then also with protocol explorers, there's already some cool protocols that exist out there. And I've seen constantly our community say like, I want to know what other protocols are out there. So people can add in a protocol that they have, and then we can just like have them copy that JSON and add it in. And then I'm doing two more. Hopefully you all aren't bored. But the next thing we have that I'm going to show is the Web5 CLI. I believe Kendall's come on and shown a lot of this, so I'm not going to go too long on it. But usually you can create verifiable credentials, decentralized identifiers, and other things with our SDK. But if you're doing more like sysadmin work and you needed to create a DID really quickly, you can do that straight from your CLI by doing Web5 did create DHT, and it'll create that DID for you, which is really cool. There's a whole bunch of other functionality here, but we want to add more. The functionality is still a bit limited. It was created pretty recently, so we want to add more, and we'll have issues for that. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is not necessarily a TBD project. It is a block project, and it's leveraging AI. And can you see my screen, by the way?
Yeah,
No,
it didn't switch
it didn't switch. Okay.
from the. I realized that too.
Cool. Let's try this again. Window. All right. This should work. This
Yeah,
should
there you go.
work. Yeah, cool. Sorry, everyone.
No, it's okay. I could have called it out sooner, but it just sounded. I wasn't sure.
I'm going like fast, right? Okay, cool. Let me try this again, right? We've seen the Web 5 CLI demoed by Kendall on past live streams. This is built in Rust, really cool to get involved with. But you can do, again, like I said, instead of using the SDK, you can basically create DIDs and VCs straight from your CLI, maybe for sysadmin purposes. So I ran Web5, did create DHT, and I was able to create entire bearer did. But we want to add in more functionality to this tool. It really just has like very, very basic, and it can have more. So that's one thing people can get involved in if they love Rust, if they love CLIs, or if you just want to learn a little bit more about Rust. Like I've always been wanting to learn Rust, and this gave me a chance to play around with it a little bit. And then the next thing, I'm going to double check. Did you see me switch the tab on my terminal? It's empty?
Yeah, it's empty.
Okay, perfect. Cool. The next thing is a project built by Block.
If you mean if you're not in Web 5 Rust, no, we haven't. It's not like completely empty. It's still
but it says, does it say
Oh,
this?
Oh, yes, okay,
Okay,
okay.
cool.
I'm just making sure.
I wasn't sure if y'all saw me switch before between this tab and this tab.
No, we
Cool.
see this now.
Okay, cool. So this project is like Block is building this AI developer agent, or like you can think of it like as a programming assistant, whatever, but right within your CLI. I think it's pretty cool. The reason it's called Goose, I learned yesterday or 2 days ago, is like it's a Top Gun reference, right? So I never watched Top Gun, but I guess there's like somebody named Goose and he's a co-pilot, so they named it after that. I thought that was cute. But what I used Goose for the other day, I don't know if y'all remember or Tanya, do you remember Kendall was trying to show off the Web 5 CLI, but he had some problems with installing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had to resolve dependencies that he couldn't do live.
Exactly. So I actually got because I was like, oh, it's so hard to install because of that. I think it's still broken. And I actually used
If you can zoom in a little bit too. There you go.
I actually used Goose to solve this. So I downloaded the repo where the Web 5 CLI stuff is going on. And I asked Goose, I was like, hey, when people run this install script, I get this particular error. Here's where it is locally on my computer. How can we fix it? I didn't start Goose. Give me a second. Square Goose session start. Okay, there we go. We're in it. Now I can run that query to it. So it'll respond. And what it should do is it's going to go tell me the couple of steps that it wants to do. So it's like, okay, first I'm going to go read that install script for you. Then I'm going to analyze it and figure out what we need to add. And what it should do, fingers crossed, AI sometimes doesn't always work how it needs to. But what it should do is it should add an update to my file. So let's see if it did it. It's writing out the update right here. I want to ask it if it could do it manually, or not without me copying and pasting. Oh, it did it actually. I didn't even know. Nice. Yeah. So right here, we can see that it's instead verifying the download, making sure the executable has permissions, and moving the executable to a specific file. So that was the problem it was the install script was having before. So those are all the things that I wanted to show. There's more projects, but those are just a few for people to know about.
Yeah. So, is there one out of the ones that you showed at least that you are maybe a little bit more excited for above the others?
That's a good
If you had to pick without offending anybody.
That's hard. Oh my God.
I have my answer a little bit, even though it's very hard to pick between these, especially.
I guess I'm excited about the Web 5 CLI just because I really want to get into Rust. So I'm like, if I could be part of like reviewing a couple PRs, that could be cool. And I'm excited about Goose too, because I haven't like I used to be really involved in like um different AI assistant stuff, and I'm like, yay, I get to be back in that world. What's yours? What's yours?
I would say it was like kind of a hard tie between the Web5 CLI and the protocol builder, mainly because something for me that can be tough and maybe for many people as well is to be able to visually see and have like some of those starter steps completed already, because
Yeah.
having to worry about install different things like can be a barrier for me when it comes to exploring a new tool. And I imagine it could be for new builders in decentralized technology in general too. So, yeah, but I really am a fan of all of our projects, of course. Like, there's just a lot that you can contribute towards, so it's cool.
Yeah. No, go ahead and say the protocol builder since I built
Yeah.
that.
So I do see that we have some questions and some comments as well. I can't star them, but we can start
Oh,
from.
I'll start it for you. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Tell me which ones. The one from Emmanuel?
Yeah, we'll just start from the top and go down from oldest to most recent. So, just a quick question, guys. Would TBDEX ever get built in PHP, or will someone have to get that started for the open source community? And I saw Angie actually answer that as well. So, what she said is we have a Rust version of the SDK that can produce bindings in other languages, right? And we won't likely make or create a PHP SDK unless there's like a lot of interest, you know? But community members, like you can take the Rust SDK and use that to create a PHP binding. Like if that's possible, you can totally do that. Like that's the awesome part to open source. Like just because, let's just say there isn't a lot of immediate interest in that from the community, but you really want to build it, and you can, or you can gather people to also build it from our community as well. Like that's actually how several like some of our incubation projects have gotten started, like just from saying like, hey, I would like this built with this, but I don't want to maybe build it myself. Like you can do that in our community as well. So next question, let's see. Yeah,
Mm.
so everything Satoshi mentioned as a comment, trying to tether the TBD project with the Nostr protocol.
Has anyone tried to do that? I
Yeah.
actually think we have there's something where like I don't know these words of like tethered and Nostr protocol because I haven't used it, but we do have, let me see. I did hear about people in our community. I think Daniel tried to do something with Nostr and Web5, and maybe it didn't work out as well.
Yeah.
Do you
I don't have any immediate tags, but I've seen the discussion pop up in our Discord several times. So if you want, you can pop up the Discord link, but feel free to join and you can ask this question in here as well. And you'll be able to directly chat with, Daniel, who is, one of the, uh, one of our team members as well. And like he can help you. Also, like I know one of our incubation projects for like DCX. Brian has also talked about this a little bit. Maybe not this specifically, but I've seen the Nostr protocol mentioned, so it would be a good place for you.
Yeah, I think so. I put up the repository look. You Tanya said, definitely hop in and ask more questions about it. I don't know the history of it because this was built like last year before I
Yeah.
joined, but I have heard people say, yeah, we did try this and it didn't exactly work out how we were hoping. So maybe there's room for you to help or whatever.
Yeah. So next question out after Annie's comments. So a follow up from Emmanuel. So okay, so one could build a CLI with PHP binding from Rust, but a standalone SDK for PHP would have been neat. Pretty sure that would be requested a lot in the future Web 5 does have. And you could be right. Like it could be like lots of potential for sure. But again, like for us to commit to building it like on our team, if there's a lot of interest, we'll do it. But as of right now, it's not likely, but that can change. That's the beauty of open source. So the next question from Uh,
Also, I want to say this is just a side note. It has nothing to do with anything. PHP
yeah,
is getting popular. Like
yeah.
I thought back in the just last year, people were like "Oh, PHP, and now everyone wants it. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was also gonna add, like, as something that's unrelated to anything, I feel like a year ago feels like back in the day. Like more and more, I start to refer to it as back in the day. But this question from Austin: does Goose do code completion? I'm just now tuning in and hearing about it.
Yeah, so we have a VS Code extension and a um IntelliJ like extension as well. The way I would describe it, like for me, at least my experience, I only used it for maybe like a few, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It's like more like autonomous than Copilot a little bit. Like with Copilot, like you hover over and it tells you, oh, like press tab and it'll complete this. But in the demo I did, we saw that it just like added in what I needed and it told me ahead of time the stops that or the steps that it was going to take. So it is code completion, but a little bit more autonomous than that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And he then asked, like, is there a recorded demo of it somewhere I can watch? I mean,
A
we don't
demo
have.
of Goose or what we
Yeah,
just
of
did.
Goose.
I don't think demos are out right now, but they will be. But if you wanted to just rewatch this live stream and see the quick thing that I did, there's a lot that you can do with Goose. Like I can expand even more. Um, I just showed like, okay, like fix this issue in my Web 5 CLI for me in the install script. But like there's also the ability to have something called toolkits where you like pull in other APIs just so Goose can have more context and be able to build off of that. So like you can pull in like the GitHub API and it can help you to like build like a GitHub bot better or GitHub Actions or leverage the GitHub CLI. You can I've seen people use it for like doing screenshots. So I don't know, they like have like some kind of screenshot tool and they're like, Goose, take the screenshot of my desktop and it'll do it. So there's a lot of extensibility with Goose compared to maybe some other AI developer agents.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's see. We definitely need Goose demos. Yeah, for sure. And Emmanuel or Austin mentioned it just hit me why you picked the Goose name. Yeah, we mentioned it. It's a Top Gun reference, and yeah, Goose co-pilot. Pretty cool, pretty funny. And what was I going to say? PHP just had a bad PR for a long time. It's a pretty good language. Yeah, I don't know. Like, if you want, you can talk a bit more of what you've heard about it, but
I don't have any qualms with it. I just heard people like PHP, but like when I go on Twitter, they're like, "Oh yeah, we love PHP," and like they're like,
always have.
"PHP have Lambos." I don't know. I'm not in the PHP world. I don't know. And like people really like Laravel, so that's helping as well.
Yeah. I don't see any other oh, Ace also saying PHP is it. Okay. So like there's like
It's
a bit
cool.
of a cultural movement, you could say, embracing PHP. I feel like that's always interesting when it comes to language and open source technologies, especially. What I've noticed, especially on Twitter, if you're on there, like the conversations can switch up so fast within the span of a month or a year where like people are like, I hate this one thing, but now I love it because I see the potential in it.
Yeah.
Sam San mentioned Laravel is huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. I see it being huge. Like I think what Emmanuel said, it just had bad PR. So we're
Yeah.
gonna quickly like switch over since we're at 48 minutes. I'm gonna show the monthly community spotlight, and then there's like a few like just a little bit more questions about like helping contributors or any like quick advice to contributors on like getting started in Hacktoberfest. So we might have to skip some of them, but I'll press play on the commercial. Oh no, sorry. Okay, we're back, and I saw a conversation between Angie and Austin really quickly about the demo video. To correct myself, there is a demo video. Angie's right in the README, but we are looking for more. That's one of like the contributions we'll be looking for. And then I also plugged, so there's like the main repo for Goose. That's like how you use the CLI. And then there's also the Goose plugins repo. And that's what where we're looking for toolkits and stuff like that to add to the extensibility. So that's also going to be another main type of contribution that we're looking for. I know we wanted contributions for like plugging into Figma, plugging into other LLMs as well. Like we have support for OpenAI, but we want a couple more plugging into like trackers, like so like what am I trying to say? Like task trackers, so like Jira and stuff like that. We want to be able to plug into like Linear and Asana and stuff like that. And we even want to have like a data science toolkit. Like right now, people have to set up their own toolkits, but we're thinking like, oh, it would be cool to tell Goose like, I'm a data scientist, I'm a front end developer. Give me the particular like default set of plugins that I might need to keep going. So that's all I wanted to note.
Alrighty. So yeah, I don't see any other immediate questions. Let me make sure. Yeah, nothing right now. But just to let everybody know, before as we start to wrap up the live stream, you'll be able to catch if you weren't able to catch this live, you'll be able to see it right away on our YouTube channel. And we always share our live streams, both when they're about to go live, the schedule and everything in our Discord and on our developer website on our calendar. So I highly recommend, and I am biased to joining our Discord because that's where we are all at. I live and breathe that. So yeah.
Yeah, if you scroll down, there's a little bit more not on the
Oh.
on the doc, but I'll just answer some of these really quickly.
Oh yes. Oh my God. Okay, so so like with some of the questions that we'll be able to get to some of these, but like it has already come up before, but is participating in Hacktoberfest only for people who code? Like, how can non-programmers get involved? Because that's especially relevant to me, I would say.
Yeah. So like you were mentioning before, we have a couple of like issues, and we'll show those during the show and tell with like contributing to our documentation, or even for us like content creation might be really helpful. So we have opportunities to write blog posts, like you all said, like we want to see more Goose demos. So if you're doing something cool with Goose, that can be cool. Or if you're doing something cool with Web5 or anything else, you want to teach somebody like how to use protocol roles, or how to use tags, or any of these, or verifiable credentials, like we welcome those as contributions as well, because oftentimes, and accessibility as well, oftentimes like technologists of different like sectors, they want to get involved, but those issues are not available. So it's not just for that particular set of people. And then I'll like quickly dive into the next questions I had listed, and it was about like the career advantages of getting into open source. So you kind of heard from me and Tanya about like how it's like help to further our career. It can be like a networking tool. It can be something that helps to build your resume. It can be just something that helps to build your skill set overall. Like for me, I said it helped me with like project management and public speaking, and just getting exposed to other technologies. But one thing I will add to people is like, rather than just like, a lot of times people do Hacktoberfest, they make one contribution and then they disappear. I think what really helps is staying within a project. Like find something you eventually like, stay within that project, and build up like a long-term relationship with that project, and become a long-term contributor, because then that maintainer knows you very well. So whenever like a job opportunity or something comes up, or like a public speaking opportunity or something, they're like, yeah, I know Tanya. She's been like helping me to maintain this project for a couple of months or a year or whatever. And maybe even you get elevated to maintainer, whatever is like within your bandwidth. I think becoming a long-term contributor really helps.
And especially when it's something that you care about, right? Like I would say a personal goal that I would set for yourself for Hacktoberfest, if you're new or you're returning and you've done Hacktoberfest each year, is just try to find things that you are passionate about, that you want to contribute to, that you want to see like come to fruition over time, as opposed to just this one-off task that you complete, as Rizel mentioned, because there's a lot of power to being a contributor that's consistently there, and you ultimately become like an expert almost on that project that you are contributing towards because you see it from the beginning. And yeah, like uh, the job market is very tough right now, and that's like one of the things that can be really cool and really beneficial to you. So yeah, to lead into some other like final questions, uh, some advice for new contributors, right? Since we've been talking quite a bit on that, like finding your first issue alone, like we're saying, like, oh, find something that you like, but finding your first issue can be difficult to contribute towards. So, like, any advice on navigating that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different websites like goodfirstissue.com and upforgrabs.net, I believe, that'll like bring up good first issues for you. And then if you want to focus, I want to of course focus on the TBD repos. We've labeled the ones that we think, okay, you don't need in-depth knowledge of this repo as like a good first issue label. And just I think part of it too is like you're gonna have to be like persistent and resourceful. So go through those issues, read them. We have like 50 plus issues. So
Yeah,
there's a lot.
there's
Like
a lot.
and we made it really accessible. So this year I think there should be enough like good first issues for a lot of people. And then the other advice I wanted to give was on getting your PR approved. Sometimes your PR can sit there for a long time. And there's like I remember my old manager Brian Douglas, he talked a lot about like making sure or how you can speed up that process, and it's not by bothering the maintainer, because remember they're busy, they have other things to do. This is oftentimes like a side project for them. But one thing you can do is make sure that like your PR description is well detailed, explaining everything that's happening in it, making sure as well that like you've checked a lot of the boxes that the issue, or yeah, that the issue was asking you for. Because I think sometimes like a maintainer might see, oh my gosh, this person didn't do everything they needed to do, and it can be a little bit discouraging because they're like, now I'm gonna have to do a little bit back and forth. So be thorough as possible.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And the project maintainers will deeply appreciate the work that you put into your contribution before you submit your PR. And like it will help you not get frustrated at it. Just sitting there, and hopefully this like sheds more light as to why that may be the case. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we can wrap up basically. I just want to remind people to go ahead and join our Discord. We have a channel in there called Hacktoberfest. Me and Tanya will be there to help, and other awesome members of TBD. And this will be a great starting place for you to ask questions. Like, we don't want you to just feel like you have to do this on your own. We'll have office hours and all that, and you can learn more about it in the live stream next week that Tanya is going to host. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and asking questions and being engaging. Thanks, Tanya, for jumping in and co-hosting this with me. And that's all I gotta say. I'll just end with a video of like the upcoming streams that we have for next week, so you can be aware. But that's about it. Bye, y'all.
Bye.